y'all, it's Heel Heat time.
Hi everybody and welcome to another episode of It Came From The Network. On this episode, we did a little something different. About a week ago, I put out on the Twitter page, first person that answers gets to pick what I review for the next It Came From The Network. And our good friend Alistair Keffer, he put out that he'd like to see SummerSlam 94. Since he was the first person that answered, he won the pony, and here goes the review. Now, I'm going to preface this if this is your first time watching one of my videos. We go by a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being the worst and 5 being the best. So, that's what we base everything off of. First match of the night, representing Money Incorporated, being led to the ring by Ted DiBiase, Bam Bam Bigelow, and Erwin R. Shyster, versus the Head Shrinkers, who are being led to the ring by Alpha the Wild Samoan and Captain Lou Albano. It's kind of cool. I liked the Head Shrinkers. I thought they were a great team. I'm a fan of Bam Bam and IRS. I kind of forgot a little bit that they were pushing to become World Tag Team Champions at one point. And at one point this was set to be a tag team title match. However, the Head Shrinkers lost the tag titles to Diesel and Shawn Michaels the night before at a house show, so kind of weird that they would do that. Although this was in the era of anything could happen in the WWF, so I understand why they do that and why they still do that to this day. Every now and then a house show, a title will change just so fans have a reason to go. If titles never change at house shows and only change on pay-per-views or TV, the fans, I don't know that they wouldn't necessarily not go, but they'd be less inclined to go. Maybe. This match was okay. It started off good. We get to the point where DiBiase tries to interfere, so Lou Albano also gets up on the apron, and Alpha goes into the ring to go after Bam Bam. The ref turns around, sees it, disqualifies the Head Shrinkers, so IRS and Bam Bam win. I thought this was a good opener, a good match. They win by DQ. I'm going to give this match a 3. With the talent involved, I think it could have been better. The Head Shrinkers are kind of one of those tag teams that no one really talks about being a great tag team, but they really were. They were a fantastic team at the time, and then, even after they split, Rikishi, who was in the Head Shrinkers, would go on and have a fabulous singles career. But this is a good opener for the show. Next up, we have my second favorite match of the night. For the WWF Women's Championship, Alundra Blaze versus Bull Nakano. And this by far isn't the best match. And Bull Nakano was brought to the ring by Luna Vachon, who was in a feud with Alundra Blaze and could not get a win over her. To give it a little backstory, so she brought Bull Nakano to the WWF. This is not the best match these two have had. I think there are some better ones, but this match is really good. This is kind of like saying that this is not their best match is like saying Flair and Steamboat, one of their matches isn't their best. Even their worst match is better than most other wrestlers' best matches. I thought this was a really good match, and it's really jarring to see how little effort and how little care was put into the women's division at this time when you had great talent there that you could have done a lot more with and could have brought more in, and then it even gets devalued more after Alundra Blaze leaves and the Attitude Era starts rolling in. The division pretty much turns into the Divas division, which we had to sit through for about 15 years before the Women's Revolution came along. But to see a match like this caliber of a match, not only on a WWF show, but being put on by two women, it's kind of jarring when you realize that they didn't really help push them more. Alundra Blaze picked up the win in the match. I'm going to give this match a 4. I thought it was really, really good. Again, not the best of their matches, but That's like saying I didn't have the best ice cream cone. It's still a good ice cream cone. Next up, we have for the Intercontinental Championship, Diesel with his partner, Shawn Michaels, the Heartbreak Kid, who just the night before won the tag team titles, is defending the Intercontinental Championship against the former Intercontinental Champion, being led to the ring by Walter Payton in Chicago, who, if you don't know who Walter Payton is, he's a Chicago Bears legend, a legendary Hall of Fame football player, one of the greatest running backs in the history of the NFL. Huge star in Chicago, and he wasn't, maybe, I don't even think he was 5 years retired at this point, maybe even less than that, and it was still fresh on everybody's mind. The '85 Bears were still considered one of the greatest, they still are now, considered one of the greatest teams of all time, one of the greatest heroes in Chicago sports history. I mean, there's him, there's Michael Jordan, and I'm trying to think of others that would go in there, but I'm sure people will fill in here. And it's not, I'm not trying to disrespect the Chicago sports legends, guys like Sammy Sosa, and yeah, I know, and Ernie Banks, and others, Mike Ditka, famously, the coach. I digress. There have been plenty of Chicago Bear legends, and, you know, of course, Mongo McMichael would become a wrestler later on, but we see his teammate here, Walter Payton, helping out Razor Ramon. Razor picks up the win in this match. I kind of thought this was a good match. Again, I've seen better between these two, so I'm going to give this match here at 3. Razor regained his Intercontinental Championship. In a way, I see what they were doing here, and I see why this what it was. And knowing what I know, that not too long after this, Diesel becomes a world champion, so I see why they took the belt off of him. I thought this was good. It could have been better, but it was still a serviceable match. Next up, we have Tatanka versus the All-American Lex Luger. Backstory is that Tatanka has been blaming Lex Luger, and it's being made to seem that Lex Luger is going to join the $1 Million Corporation. So that's the reason for these two to fight as two baby faces. This match, it was bad. And I don't want to rip either one of these guys. I think Lex Luger gets unfairly ripped at times, that he's not as bad as people want to portray him to be. And Tatanka is along that lines. He's not as bad as people portray him to be. Unfortunately, when you got two guys that aren't the best of wrestlers together, they kind of put a bad match on. And it wasn't really that great of a match. The story was okay. It felt more like it would be something that would fit in the early 80s to mid 80s than something in the mid 90s, when we start seeing the revolution of high flyers coming in, of big men like Razor Ramon that can work like the littler guys can. You know, start seeing guys like Kane and Undertaker who push the boundaries of what a big man can do. Bam Bam Bigelow, same thing. So we're seeing that era is starting to push to the forefront, and we're getting the style of the bygone era in this match, at this point even. So, to me, it wasn't that great a match. Tatanka picks up the win. Afterwards, we see that it's actually Tatanka that joins the $1 Million Corporation. I give this match a 2. It doesn't hold up well to time, and even at the time, if I remember right, because I haven't watched this particular pay-per-view since it originally aired. At the time, I don't think I thought very highly of it either, so not only did it not age well, but it also did not sit well in the period. And you got to remember, as this is going on, we're starting to see ECW bubble up and ECW change what wrestling is going to be. This is the very early stages of what they're doing there, and WCW starting to get the ball rolling to go to Nitro, and we're starting to see guys like on WCW, like Big Van Vader and Cactus Jack and Too Cold Scorpio, and guys that are changing the game and setting the bar for what's about to come up in a short time within the next couple years. So, and even Luger would change a little bit of his style. He still kept it very much to fit his character, but he evolved a bit and he became more of a better wrestler than he was at this point. So to me, I think either of these two wrestlers, if you would have had, like, let's say Tatanka versus Razor Ramon and Lex Luger versus, like, IRS maybe, or they're wrestling against a guy that could control the match a little bit better, I think they would have had a better match. Unfortunately, it fell flat to me. Next up, we had a match that had very little build other than it was billed as country music versus rap, and that's JEFFJARRETT Jeff Jarrett versus Mabel from Men on a Mission. Again, this match fell flat again, and Jeff Jarrett kind of at this time was solid with that hokey gimmick, but he was one of those guys I want to say he was like a Shawn Michaels light on the card, where everything that Shawn could do a little bit lesser down the card, Jeff Jarrett was doing as well. Jeff Jarrett was putting on great matches in the shadows of guys like Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, who were getting more of the spotlight while he was down lower in the card and doing it as well. So to me, to see him in a match like this, where Mabel, let's be honest, he never was the greatest wrestler. He had some good gimmicks, and I don't want to speak ill of the guy because he was entertaining. But this just kind of fell flat again. And the funny thing about it is Jeff Jarrett's playing a very up-to-date country music act, a very in the 90s at that time style, very close to what the style of it was. A little bit twangy, still a little bit of the old style mixed in. But Mabel, and here's why rapping gimmicks usually don't work. Rap evolves, and hip-hop as a music, and I'm going to take a little sidetrack here, evolves so rapidly that what is popular and what is in style today, 2 years from now is going to be passé and hated. And there's going to be a whole new style. And it's been that way ever since the beginning of rap. And one of the things that hindered people like Men on a Mission, that hindered guys like PN News, other rapping gimmicks, PG-13, is even here, Men on a Mission rap like Curtis Blow would have, or the Fat Boys would have, in an era where we have Tupac and Dr. Dre and Notorious B.I.G. and Snoop Dogg and the Wu-Tang Clan's coming out, and we got all these new style rappers that are totally different than the generation before them, and that's part of what the evolution of rap is. And unfortunately, the further it goes on, a year of Men on a Mission, it's even more dated because even more evolution happens. Like, if you think about it now, if you're someone that listens to rap music now, think about this. A kid that's listening to the Migos or Cardi B or, Tekashi 6ix9ine, the style of music that they're putting out is very different than even a couple years ago with the style that Rick Ross put out or Meek Mill put out, or even Drake, who's still popular now. His style of music is different than the style that's very popular right now. And you could see, even if you're not someone that's been following rap for its entirety, you can see that it keeps evolving and changing, and it's a different art form, which is why a gimmick based on rap, I don't think is ever going to work. R-Truth works to a degree because he's true to who he is. And it kind of is like a Run DMC or a Beastie Boys or a Nas or Jay-Z. someone that's never going to grow out of favor because it's true to what they are. And R-Truth, I mean, it's had varying levels of success. I think he's a decent enough rapper and he puts enough into it that it keeps it popular. I'd like to have seen them update his beat every now and again and him change it up a bit, but I digress. We've gone too far off into a tangent. Let's reel it back into the show. Jeff Jarrett versus Mabel. I thought this was a bad match. Jeff Jarrett picks up the win. A bad match that I just spent 4 minutes talking about. I'm going to give that a 2. I didn't like this match at all. And I'm sorry. I had to go off on that little bit of a tangent. Sometimes I got to show my other interests and explain why something like Mabel doesn't work, at least in my opinion, or would never have worked, to me. Next up, we have the best match of the show, and that is Bret Hart versus Owen Hart in the steel cage, and it's the big, blue, beautiful WWE cage, and it's a match that you can only win by escaping the cage, no pinfalls, just beat each other and leave. I prefer the big blue cage. I like the style of it. I like the look of it. I like the mesh, the chain link fence cage. I like that better in like War Games or something like that, Hell in a Cell. But for my money, if I'm going to see a cage, it always looked more violent in the big blue cage. It looked like it hurt more, and it probably did because there was no give to it. And for the way the WWE, which was different than or WWF at the time, which was different than the rest of wrestling, the rest of the wrestling world, the cage was meant to keep you in, and you wrestled a normal match inside the cage. You could use it as a weapon. However, there wasn't you win by escaping the cage, where the WWF is different. Your goal is to get out of the cage. And one thing I never understood, why do people try to climb over the cage instead of going through the door? It's always going to be easier to go through the door. It makes no logical sense, but I digress. This match was absolutely fantastic. A lot of people argue this match and WrestleMania 10, which is the best Bret vs. Owen match. I lean a little bit more towards the WrestleMania 10 match. I think it's a little bit purer of a wrestling match. This match is more of a feud type match, which is great, don't get me wrong. You're asking me, do I want to own the red Corvette or the maroon Corvette? And I might like the red Corvette a little bit better, but I'm going to take the maroon Corvette if it's my only option every single time, and both of them are beautiful. And this was an amazing match. This was really good. It helped a lot that the Hart family was on the outside. Jim Neidhart, who had been helping Bret Hart, was in the crowd behind Davey Boy Smith. And we see afterwards that Bret picks up the win by escaping before Owen. We see afterwards Neidhart comes and helps out Owen attack Bret, but then they get into the ring, they lock themselves in, they start beating up Bret, fending off the other Hart family members who eventually get in and then they run off. I think this is the best match of the show. One of the best matches in the history of SummerSlam, probably easily a top 5 SummerSlam match of all time, and could be argued that it's the best match in SummerSlam history. I'm going to give this match a 5. I think it was really good. I kind of wish that Owen won the title here, but that's just the Owen fan in me. I was always an Owen Hart fan more than a Bret Hart fan, but that's just me. And last but not least, we have the main event of the evening. Paul Bearer's Undertaker versus Ted DiBiase's Undertaker. And we come in and you notice right away, and I don't think it was that noticeable back then, but then again, I was watching it on a CRT TV. So, through coaxial cable, not 1080p over, HDMI cable. It's very noticeable which Undertaker is really the real Undertaker, and which one's Brian Lee, who would later become Chains. And first off, Mark Calloway Undertaker, or what's, for argument's sake on this to make it simpler, Undertaker Purple, is about 4 inches taller than, from argument's sake, Undertaker Gray, and we're going based off the accents to their costumes, which was Mark Calloway wore purple gloves, purple accents, Brian Lee wore gray. So anytime they're face to face, you see the height difference, and their faces are different. Now, when they have their hair in front of their face, which they tried to do for most of the match, it's not as noticeable. And like I said, watching it in 1994 on a CRT TV, it might have had that illusion more, but the size difference was never something that you didn't notice. This match was, I didn't like it. I thought it was bad. I thought it was hokey. I kind of think it was everything that was wrong about the WWF and why they were starting to slip after such high marks during the Hogan and Warrior era, that the new generation kind of faltered a bit, was hokiness like this. Undertaker versus Undertaker. Everybody knew. There was a certain amount of disbelief I'm willing to suspend, but not this far. And this is the beginning where we started getting into the everybody has a side job gimmicks. Every gimmick was over the top and cartoony. Everything was basically waiting for a palette change with the Attitude Era, which actually started with the ECW Revolution. And ECW changed and gave us a more realistic approach, whereas WWE kept getting sillier and goofier. I mean, Undertaker's holding, or Paul Bearer's holding an urn that has a spotlight in it. I mean, and that controls the Undertaker's power. I digress. Undertaker Purple picks up the win. I give this match a 2. I didn't think it was good at all. Yeah, I might say watch it just for the pure spectacle. Other than that, there's no value to it. And with that, we're going to do a little bit of a recap. There's 2 matches on this card that I say you absolutely should watch. Lunder Blaze versus Bull Nakano, and Bret Hart versus Owen Hart. You can skip the rest of the show completely and just watch those 2 and be happy. So I'm going to go into our ratings for this. Again, we have a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. We add a little bit of flair to it here on this. 1 is a gobbledygooker, 2 is a Dungeon of Doom, 3 is a Hurricane Helms, 4 is a Goldust, and 5 is a Kane. So I'm going to give this one a 3, a Hurricane Helms. If you take away the Bret and Owen cage match, it drops down to a 2. If you take away the Lunder Blaze Bull Nakano match, it probably drops down to 1. And I know I didn't rate anything that bad, but overall, the overall enjoyment just dips a lot. So those 2 matches basically carry this show to a 3, when it really should be a 1 or a 2. It's what I have. I mean, I really didn't enjoy watching this back. I liked seeing some wrestlers that I enjoyed. Bret Hart, Owen Hart, Undertaker, Razor Ramon, Diesel, Alundra Blaze, Bull Nakano. There's a lot of wrestlers I like watching that were on this card, but the card itself and the era of the WWE were pretty bad. So to me, this was what you would look for in a Came From the Network, where we look for the weird, the wacky, the wild, and sometimes just downright bad. So with all that being said, one more time I'd like to say a big shout out to our good friend Alistair Keffer, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. I think I am, because I think I pronounced it before and you said I was right. So hopefully, if not, I'm sorry. I mean you no disrespect. You've been a great follower. You jumped in a couple times when I wanted to expand to other things and jump right on board. You're always on the Twitter whenever I post stuff. You're always one of the first people to watch my videos. I really appreciate all your support. I'm 100% honest with you. You probably are one of my biggest... I don't even want to call you a fan at this point, because I've interacted with you so much, and I feel more like we're friends, and I would want to call you fans. And I don't like calling any of you guys that watch fans. Really, I like having that back and forth with you guys. I like reading your comments and commenting back and reading what you put on my Twitter or Facebook, and going back and forth with you through those avenues. So I really feel it's more a friends type thing than a fans type thing, if you know what I mean. But anyway, I'm rambling on. Thank you again, Alistair. I appreciate your recommendation. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and this has been another episode of It Came From the Network.